Hi everyone, welcome to episode 13 of the Noor Podcast. My name is Noor, and I'm really excited to show you what we've been discussing this week with myself, Vision and Ali. Just reflecting on some of the journey that we've had regarding the Noor Podcast, some of the guests that we've had, some of the extraordinary guests that we've had, our journey towards going to a live theatre at Law 14, as well as some of the great guests that we're going to have in the future, as well as some advice for our future guests when they're attending the Noor Podcast. So thank you.
Okay, so how's everyone doing?
Doing well. How are you?
Yeah? Wow.
Yeah.
Look at that. You didn't even just like start the sentence, right? So obviously we don't have a guest today, but it wasn't by accident. I think we've had, obviously Nemad's been away for a while, a month and a half
6 months.
Exactly.
Good to finally have you back.
I know, it is
Glad to
good.
be back.
It feels like it's been ages.
Yeah.
It feels like, I think the last time you were on an episode was when we were like less than 100 followers on Instagram.
Yeah, a lot.
It's like
a lot.
wild.
I've had a positive influence.
Yeah.
I'm being away. Not another 6 weeks.
Nah, bro, we need those more. My name is Nemad episode. You want to say that?
Sorry?
You want to say my name is Nemad, just the clip?
No.
You've been doing a lot of work at the back end of things.
Yeah. No.
A lot has happened. We've had many guests come on since I think you've been around in terms of productions. We've had like a number of just very talented individuals come through, share their stories. I'm sure you've been keeping on top of it as well.
For sure.
Yeah.
We've had quite a big growth in terms of our followings, which has been amazing, and we really appreciate everyone tuning in, coming along for the journey and seeing what we have to share.
But after this many episodes and like having guests on constantly, I think for the last 2 months almost, I thought it would have been good to just go back to the first love, which is just us having a chat about, our passions and our dreams and how it all started.
Dreams still dreams. As things change.
But also I just wanted to have because I think it's important to reflect, right? And I think it's interesting the stage of our growth that we are. I think I was having a meeting with someone for the podcast, one of the featured guests recently, and one of the things we talked about was just about how do you optimize and how do you grow if you get so much data. And I made a really good analogy on the spot there, but I wanted to share it as well, which was like, when you like first start going to the gym, regardless of what you do in the gym, it doesn't matter what it is, because you're brand new, you will just get stronger. Your PRs will go up. Like, it doesn't matter how efficient you are or how optimal your form is or anything, you'll just get stronger because you're going from nothing, right? So it's not really smart to start optimizing your gym when you're first starting, because you actually want to get that initial growth and then you will plateau at some point. And that's when you can grab the data and go, where can I improve to get start that journey again? And so when he was talking about like us as a podcast and like the data we're getting and how we can improve, I just thought, I think it's still too early because we are still getting that initial growth. We're still scaling. Every episode is doing better than the last episode, which means it's not because anything we've changed, it's just because more people are coming to watch it, right? So we're still in the early days. We've still got a lot to grow, and I think we can just focus on like the cinema quality, the sound quality, and everything's just slowly improving. The guests, the topics, and I think we're getting better as well as guests. As hosts.
Yeah, I think that's been the most enjoyable part about it, is those teething problems, having those issues that we face and being like, all right, how are we going to get past this and what improvements can we get and trying new things and seeing how our audience reacts to it. It's been so much fun, just trial and error, seeing what works, and I think if we had that end game quality, it wouldn't be as smooth. I think it would get quite stagnant.
Yeah, I mean, if we are in the smallest part that this podcast is going to be right now, we are the lowest number of followers we will be in the future is right now, right? And so it is the perfect time to take risks and try new things, because if we screw up, not a big deal. We only have 220 followers, right? Whereas if we have 2,000, we have to be a bit more
Consistent.
risk-free, consistent, make sure we're pushing out that quality content. Right now it's the time to experiment. It's really cool. I mean, like, I think we've broken out of the brand new.
Yeah.
We do exist now. People are aware. I get people all the time, especially, it hasn't gone to the degree of like a stranger coming to me, but definitely people I've known and people that maybe don't have that obvious of a connection to me have seen the podcast and been like, this is really cool what you're doing. And like, everything I'm hearing is pretty positive, so.
I think I could definitely relate with that, and that would be with that birthday party that you guys had coming through, and obviously it's a whole set of different people that I've never met, but it just felt so surreal coming through, and everyone's like, oh, your voice sounds familiar, or hey, you're Ali from the podcast. I'm like, you actually listen.
Yeah.
and it felt really good. Just seeing the audience in person.
Was that just that?
All the audience. He's been replaying everything. He's creating an algorithm.
Him and John.
But no, it was like these different faces coming through, and like even at the one stage, we were just sitting down having food, and someone was like, "I've never actually watched the videos, but your voice sounds familiar."
Wow.
And I'm like,
Spotify, I guess.
"Is it obnoxious?"
Yeah.
But.
Yeah.
The fact that you just recognize.
What are you trying to imply?
I have an obnoxious voice. But I was like, the fact that you could just pick me off with my voice. It had quite a rewarding feeling. Just being like, oh, this, creating some content that people are willing to listen to. And yeah, just building it from there, seeing what we can grow and.
Exactly. My craziest one was definitely, I think I told you guys this, but when my barber recognized me.
Your barber?
Yeah, I was going to get a haircut because I go to Blade's Barber Lounge in next to like underground under the David Jones. But they are closing down, so that's not that.
No correlation.
They're not going to be there anymore. I can't plug them. But
no, if they came onto the podcast, they'll definitely be in business still.
Mark, come through. So they. Essentially, I was getting a haircut from him, and he doesn't follow me on anything. There's no like social media mutual content at all. But I've been going to him since the start of uni, and so I think he's just recognized my face, seeing me around. And occasionally, remember I get a haircut once every 2 months, right? So it doesn't seem that often. But occasionally, Breeze would wait with me as well while I was getting the haircut. So he's like seen Breeze's face enough to like recognize her
and make the connection.
Yeah. And so I was getting the haircut last week, 2 weeks ago, and he goes, I think I saw your girlfriend like on a podcast, like on Instagram. Is that your podcast? I'm like, yeah, it is. Like, how did you? We're not like following each other or anything. Like, how did you say? It's like, oh, I just came on my like explore page, like recommended, and I'm like. That's so cool. That was probably the first experience I had where somebody that I wasn't following or like on socials actually came up to me and was like, recognize what you're doing.
I think for me, it's like I've had school friends who I haven't seen for 5, 6, 7 years, and then met them across the street or at the gym, and they're like, oh wow, you're doing a podcast, great work, like love the content, excited to see where you go with this. And I've had the same experience with my barber. And
really?
Who's seen the podcast and it's like, yeah, I'd love to be on it for one day. And I'm like, of course, that'd be great. But a lot of people are that's the good thing about technology and about social media is the fact that you have unlimited leverage. Like one video that can go viral and like 1 million people, 10 million people can see. And that happened with us. We got a video with Indian effect, got like 600,000 views.
Yeah.
And people are still arguing in the comments.
Literally every day I wake up and then because the time zone difference, I wake up every morning to like 3 more argumentative comments.
Rajai and Sanjeev. That's pretty good. So like technology has great advantages, and so the fact that you can use it and reach out to people and amplify your voice and the value of the efforts that they can be multiplied. I think that's really great. But I've had
That's to be candid though, like I think it's with the friends, and maybe in the last episode we had Alex and who runs what was it called? Cargo Entertainment, and some of artists on, Ethan and Sam on, and Ethan mentioned they had a chat about the tall poppy syndrome in Australia, in Adelaide, and I definitely feel that when starting something, where like it's a gamble, right? People are either gonna love it or they're gonna make fun of you. And even when I'm starting this, I think in the back of my mind, I'm like, I hope people like it and doesn't make fun of you. Because if you hit those nerves, for some people, it's easier for them to like make fun of you than to actually for trying something new.
Yeah, for sure.
Rather than because that's not part of our culture here, you know. Like our culture is to conform, not to innovate.
Yeah, and I think that goes to the wider Australian community. It's just not teenagers or people that just want to try something. It's not just teenagers. It's prevalent in the wider community, and so whether it be our financials, we're very stable. Whether it be our some of our inventions and innovations, and try to really push for something and new ways of doing things. It's very, very hard. Australians are very conservative. When I used to work in Macca's, especially in Adelaide in South Australia, because disposable incomes are much lower than the eastern states. What McDonald's will do is whenever they would experiment or bring in a new product, they would actually try it out there because the market is very conservative. And if it works here, it's likely to work in the eastern states.
Really?
Yeah. And you work in McDonald's
as well,
so
I didn't know that. Yeah.
So that's what they do. They try it in the most difficult of markets, which is Adelaide. Then if it's successful, then they implement it in the eastern states. But there's problems with that, right? Having the fear of not trying new things for the risk of being criticized is
yeah, because it's good in the fact that like you can. Like yes, like you said, if you start something here, it'll work anywhere.
Yeah.
But some businesses need to be high risk in the fact that it's expected that it shouldn't work straight away, and you actually need to build a reputation slowly for it to work. And a business model like that is so hard to pull off in Adelaide. Yeah. Whereas in somewhere where the people are a bit more open to something new, then it can slowly grow. Where
a larger sample size.
Yeah. Someone will like it, you know what I mean? And then that community will grow slowly.
I was given the example by a businessman that, and he gave a story of his grandfather, and I think he was saying that his grandfather opened like a chicken shop, chicken food shop or whatever, fish and chip shop there, and he said that
where was this?
This was a basketball game. So
where did he open the store?
In Adelaide.
Oh, in Adelaide.
And so the guy's originally from Adelaide, but then he moved out. He found a partner, then went to Sydney. And so he had experience in both, the eastern states and in Adelaide. And he was recalling the story of his grandfather, how his grandfather was saying that the difference between that, or from his experience, was that in Adelaide, because the market is so small, like I said, the sample size is so smaller, that the great businessmen are born in Adelaide because you're forced to. Because the market is so small, and you're forced to do so many things and innovate so that you can capture, customers so that they can be reoccurring. And so because the market is so small, that there are no new customers like in Melbourne. Because it doesn't really matter in Melbourne what you do. You can't if your customer service is really bad, it doesn't matter. A new customer will just walk in and do something, and that is then sustainable. Whereas that's not the case in Adelaide. Adelaide, you're forced to have great customer service so that the people can keep coming back. So that's the difference between the two states. But it's harmful. It's not just I'm not going to try this new high risk, whether business or idea or initiative or whatever it may be. It's just very low risk at all.
Yeah, that's right.
Very risk averse, regardless if it's low or high. And that's very, very harmful. Australians are falling really, really behind. You can see in terms of technologies. We're buying from the US and Europe, and we're not necessarily developing our own. Australia is a really good services-based economy, but not a product-based manufacturing. And that's due to manufacturing as well and cost, but the general thing is, and research. But in other areas of industry, we lack so much because of that basic mindset.
Yeah, I mean, so this is exactly why when we're initially starting that episode,
the podcast,
putting that first episode out, sharing it, it's always nerve-wracking when you share it to your private account for the first time, and it's just like,
what are people going to say? Sure.
Luckily, I think reflecting on what we've done and what we've been able to just kind of set up here, I think we've done a good job in the fact that we're not trying to copy someone else.
Yeah.
We're not just another podcast. You know what I mean? And yeah, maybe is there any specific positive or negative feedback that you've gotten from your friends or family or anyone that kind of like helped guide where you wanted the podcast to go? Like any feedback? I mean, I can start off while you think, but I remember the first maybe like season, so first like 8 episodes, consistently people were giving feedback, not about the content. Content was great, but people were giving feedback about the quality of the audio specifically. And it was like, it was so frustrating because obviously we were limited to that setup, and we're pushing out good quality content, but then the audio quality was bad. So it really refined the need, re-established the need in my head to like, we got to invest in some good equipment and get that going. And then we had that episode with Jot, where we got to borrow his equipment, get the lighting set up in the new venue, and
It was so good.
it showed us the dream,
Yeah.
and now we're trying to get there. And we're close. So hopefully we'll get to that soon. But that's probably for me. I mean, like content-wise, that's what I kept hearing was that like this is new. Like nobody's done this before. Like people have been saying that we've tapped into like there's a need here.
Yeah.
People's stories aren't being told. Because social media is too fast-paced. You know, attention spans are too short. There's no storytelling platform that lasts more than 10 seconds, you know? And getting to start something like this in Adelaide, where there's so many interesting people, like you said, just before, a lot of the best CEOs and business leaders are born in Adelaide. We get the chance to do them
Yeah, for sure.
while they're still young, which is really, really exciting. So that's probably something that I heard. What about you guys? Do you have any feedback that you got from people?
I think initially it was my own self-criticism, to sort of, like you said, going out into this and having that preconceived notion and being exposed to social media and sort of looking at it and like, okay, we have to really be fast-paced, we have to be hitting the new social trend as soon as it happens and trying to stay on top of everything. It stressed me out a lot, and then reflecting to what content we're making, I was like, this is so slow. But then as we've been developing, as we've been growing and like hearing some people's feedbacks, it's been the fact that they're like, it's refreshing. It's refreshing the fact that it's very laid back, but it still has good structure to it, and you're bringing people in that have a story and just wisdom. Like those really golden nuggets of wisdom that they can share with the world. And even within us Adelaideans, essentially, about what opportunities are available within Adelaide, what avenues we can go down, and people have found that quite insightful. But then it's also been, and like referring back to that tall poppy syndrome, it's been a thing where there is feedback where some people are hesitant and like, what does the future of this podcast look like? Is it just the fact that, oh, you guys are going to start off, it's going to fizzle? You have that hype for the first 6 months, 1 year, and then afterwards you realise actually this is going to work out and fizzles. I do have a sense from some people that they sort of, when they approach it, they go, oh, how's the podcast going? There is that sort of context behind the question, which it's that condescending notion behind it and the tone. But to be honest, over time it's really pushed me, because when I hear it, I'm like, actually, I'm glad I took the risk, and then I'm glad that we got from how I see the right set of people, how well there's that synergy between us and how we can bounce off one another, and I go, I appreciate that condescending sort of statement you've made, because to me it shows either one of I guess envy, or one of again how a lot of people are very safe and they think very conservatively, they might even have that aspect within their thoughts that like, actually there's something that could come of this, which could instill them having that condescending statement, because some people will have that ego where they're like, if I don't want to see somebody do good, but the way, and I've expressed this to everyone that's close to me, I said, just wish well for everybody.
I think it's also like because that condescending, where it comes from, I haven't personally had too much of that experience, but it makes sense because some people, especially people that are a bit older, have had experiences, have had failures specifically, have tried things and it didn't work out. They might stop trying because they instill an idea in their hearts that no one can make it, because this is impossible, right? And having that belief helps them to go day by day without feeling guilty for the fact that they've given up. And when they see someone around them
that's doing things
contradicting your own idea about yourself, they need to attack you, because otherwise your own idea about yourself is broken.
Yeah, for sure.
Because then you start having to think, wait, no, not so that everyone can't do it, I can't do it. And that forces you to question yourself.
What is the quote that goes along the lines of, people don't want to be told the truth because it shatters their illusions about themselves.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think that's exactly right. The fact that you're trying new things that could potentially do very well, and then not them knowing that
being too scared to see what the possibilities.
It's like seeing it's like relativity, like them seeing us potentially doing well. That's like, what am I doing? Yeah, that could have been me. That could have been achieved that way. So that's just kind of the culture. I think whenever you try something new, you're gonna have people like that, and people who maybe are a little bit distant. It doesn't really matter. But the people who are close to you, when you get comments like that, from the people who are close to you, that stings a little bit.
It does.
But sometimes you have to go. There's no growth without trying things new, especially in this kind of area where none of us are hosts, none of us are technicians or photographers or videographers or anything like that. But taking that step outside of all our comfort zones in order to try something new.
Yeah.
And obviously you're gonna have people that don't understand or not encouraging of it because it's not something that they're willing to take that risk. And that's just human nature. So
going to that topic of how you said people close to us bring those comments. I think that's why so many businesses are forced to be so creative and think outside of the box in Adelaide.
Yeah.
Is because of how small we are. Somehow we know somebody, like we have a connection with somebody in Adelaide, and that's why when we speak about it, for us and for anybody starting a business, if you've got such a tight-knit community, and then you've also got these individual pockets of individuals that want to think outside the box, take that risk, do something that's not that's outside of the conformed normalities, then you're going to have those comments come through, the stinging comments, and that's why I appreciate those sort of comments coming through, because then I go, actually, it's so much better for me to over-engineer my product and then for it to lack something. So someone goes, podcasts all good, but this, I think the people close to you, whether they say it out of truth or whether they say it out of ego, will point out flaws, and the honest people around you will say, okay, this is what you're lacking, this is what you need to improve. Where other people will go, but there's this aspect of your podcast that's really bad. And you can either sit there and go, okay, damn, it's a failure. Or you go, all right, that's some good feedback. Let me go back, let me change around the blueprint, let me see what I can add to it. And I think, going back to it, it's like, in Adelaide, you can get from one side of Adelaide to the other side within 5 minutes an hour. 5 minutes. And somehow you still meet somebody on the other side. So you go from Gawler to Marion or to Half Cove, and somehow you'll run into somebody that you know. Whereas in markets, the eastern suburb like Sydney, Melbourne, it takes you an hour to travel 20 kilometres.
Yeah.
And it feels like you're in a completely different city. So I think that's where, like for us, we will sort of get faced with that dark reality of the people close to us, either honestly telling us what's failing with our business or saying it out of frustration or out of envy, and in their subconscious mind, they're like, oh, why didn't I do that? Actually, let me hit them with this really sharp comment, and hopefully that will, take them down.
But either way, we improve.
We have.
Sure.
Because it doesn't matter what they meant by the feedback. We can still take it and improve, right?
Because it's that saying where it's never like, in terms of the comments that I said, and it was like, I found that funny when I first heard it at work, and they were talking about the comments that you make within one another and the discussions that people have. It's not about what you say, it's about how the person takes it. And you could say something that is completely out of one context, and somebody else, the way they think and the way they might get offended by it, and it is not even near that ballpark of offending someone. And when I initially heard that, I was like, what the hell is going on? So I have to watch what I say because somebody else's thought process is different.
Yeah.
That's the stupidest thing out there. People in the office need to grow a backbone and have some aspect of common sense. But then when it came to comments that came to me...
Are you addressing to the person?
Exactly.
You know who you are.
You know who you are.
But then when it came to comments to me, then I sort of realized, I was like, you can have whatever context you want to say to me, but how I process it ultimately dictates the emotion that it's going to have on me and the influence that it'll have on me. So you could say with whatever sort of, if you're saying it out of genuine feedback and actually willingness to help us grow, I appreciate that and I'll use that to my advantage. If you want to try and, knock me down a couple of pegs and be like, lose the motivation for this, I'll take it for motivation.
Mm-hmm.
I'll take it for feedback that it should have been, because it's Adelaide, we're small, we need to thrive, we need to grow, we need to push one another to
Well,
push ourselves.
interestingly, one of the feedback that I got about the podcast as well, and this was very recent, I think it was last week, was, I think it was one of my sister's friends, were talking about, no, it wasn't, it was one of
Is that again?
one of Breeze's friends was talking about the podcast, and what they said was, and I really liked this, they said, when you watch them, you can see that they are not doing it to get anything out of it. Yep. They're doing it because they enjoy it. And it's so different from what you see
from people that try to sell something to you.
Exactly. Yeah. Content online right now, you go on and someone's trying to sell you a course, or someone's trying to make money, or someone's trying
to... So guys, if you want the blueprint for a podcast...
you know who to go.
That's right. And
go bitches there.
Again, I think you said it, refreshing.
Yeah.
It's different. And the other thing was yes, competition's great, and yes, you want to succeed, but true success is contagious, right? If you truly succeed, the people around you will also succeed. And I love that what we're doing with the podcast is kind of bringing up Adelaide. You have a small business, let's get you on here. Let's get you talking about how do you get here, tell us your story, get people to that place. Because we don't just want to grow, we want everyone to grow around us. We want to build a community of growth. And I think through this podcast, in the small fraction that we can, we are attempting to break that top boy syndrome. Because we're getting people on here every week who have gone against the norm, against the status quo, and tried something. And we will hear stories of failure, but we will also hear stories of success. And I think the other beauty of it is that, because obviously we're small, and we get the opportunity and privilege to interview amazing people, but before they've done amazing things. If you know what I mean. Because big talk shows will only get you on after you're successful. We're getting people on, interesting people on just for the sake of they're interesting, right? And we get to see and get a glimpse of their mindset. They might achieve something next year or in 5 years' time or 10 years' time, but we got them on beforehand. We get to see how they were starting, and I think that's really special.
I think I'd rephrase that. It's amazing people doing before they've done extraordinary things. Because they're doing amazing things now. To build their portfolio, to build their skills and their wealth of knowledge. it hasn't gotten to that breakthrough point where it's like the whole world is ready for it, or in Australia or South Australia is ready to really embrace that tech, or whatever they're focusing on. So I think, all of our guests have been doing amazing things in the background, but I can't wait to see when they do that one extraordinary thing that just breaks through onto their platforms and onto whatever stage they're really trying to get themselves onto. And I think that's the beauty of it is
exactly
seeing even our journey. I mean, hopefully it gets to one day where we've got a theatre that's booked out, and we've got people coming through. Like we'll do the podcast, we'll do I think even like a live TV show sort of thing, and we can have guests come through, and we can do that hybrid mix, which would be great. But it's just seeing people in the early days. I think that's the beauty of it.
Exactly. What I've got a question for both of you. What's something that you've actually taken out of the podcast yourself, being in it or listening to it from one of the guests? What have you learned? What has been something that somebody has said that has been a value add to your life?
I think for me, one of the things leaving guests alone is watching one another and having our experiences on podcasts. I think it's for me it's communication and really structuring my thoughts, because I think I'm a fast thinker, and sometimes me speaking and my mind sometimes is not in sync. So I think what I've really the most important is, I think personally for me, taking out of it is really trying to structure my thoughts and calming down and really trying to be able to communicate in a much more logical way and a much more simpler way than I usually communicate. So I think that's one of the main things that I've taken out for myself.
I think for me, in terms of things that I've learned having those interactions with the guests, it's been the fact that speaking to, I think it was the episode that we did with John and them talking about how they started, how they're going about their initial plans and where they are now. And that really opened my mind, because for me, in terms of business, in terms of ventures and those sort of pathways, I've always been the type of person that likes to hypothesize what could potentially happen before even witnessing it firsthand. I could think of, all right, I'm going to start this business, or I'm going to do this, and then before I've even had my first client, before I've even created my first product, whatever it may be, I will hypothesize what the end company is going to face. And then I'm like, all right, so I need to have this tax structure, I need to have this business structure, I need to have this trust here, this company here, then I need to be setting up these legal things. And then I find 6 months have gone past, and that business idea is long gone. Now I'm sitting here thinking how I'm going to structure a Fortune 500 company with nothing. And then I lose hope, because a Fortune 500 company isn't just one person. So many of these really successful companies are not one person doing everything. You can't be a jack. Like in business, you have to be the jack of all trades, the master of none, and know enough of every single aspect of the business to run it, but find someone that is skilled and has those skill sets that you can work alongside, that you can bring together to excel in those areas. And that was the biggest thing that I found was in my head, I get so caught up in it, and literally I spent 6 months, a year theoreticizing a business, and being like, okay, I want this is what I want the end product to be. And then by that time, opportunities have gone. The emotions have really faded, and like the happy emotions. Now I'm stressed out, and
what was it about Josh and Jot that
listening to them talk? They were just like, we got our customer. We went into that field, and then we figured out how to swim. Essentially, we jumped at the deep end. We didn't take the time to learn how to swim. Which is risky, and I think that was another aspect of having that like risk-averse mindset previously, where you mitigate all the risks. Whereas with them, they're like, oh yeah, no, we went, one of our clients initially came through, we said, all right, this is how much we're going to charge. Had no idea how to do photography, had no idea how to do videography, and we still got it done. And then there was the other one where, they work with quite a big consulting firm, and who cares? Let's land the contract first, let's get the business done, and then figure out how we're going to do it. And sometimes you need a mix of the two, but it really puts into perspective how sometimes you just have to throw yourself in the deep end.
Bias towards action.
Yeah.
That was what Josh said in that episode that you was referring to.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny you say John Josh, because I was going to say also refer to John. You probably got us make jokes, but one of the things we were saying was that John watched this episode like 4 times, the same thing again and again.
His own episode?
Yeah, his own one.
House of
as well. No, it's because he's...
Who would have guessed?
Hey, he's good looking, alright? You gotta give it to him.
No, because he didn't just treat this as an opportunity for him to promote something or just talk. He took this, when he came on as a guest, as an opportunity for him to grow from himself and learn from himself, and he took that very seriously. So he was telling me, because we had him on the second time, and when he was here the second time, he was telling me how he was watching it again, taking notes, and then reviewing what he liked about it, what he didn't like. He got his friends to review it, got feedback from it. It's how can I be better? How can I be better? And it got me thinking. It's I shoot one a week, and I don't do that. You know what I mean? And that level of proactiveness, on improving oneself, I think that was really, really good to see. Jot's always been a bit of an inspiration to me in the fact that, even I think his whole uni, his whole life here has been in that same mindset. Coming as an international student straight from India, and then getting to where he is, where his English skills are incredible. For an international student, you can't tell. His networking skills, he really didn't just stick with the Indian crowd. He really made himself uncomfortable and just constantly trying to be better. I think that's pretty admirable. And probably the quote I'd like to say is when we had him on the second time, he probably something that stuck with me, or something that's come up I even remember now, stuck with me a lot, is he said, "What doesn't get measured doesn't improve." And that's probably something that's always been on my mind, of making sure data, measuring, analyzing, improving, and that iterative cycle of it. So that's probably something for me.
I think that's what this episode is really going to be doing for us as well, is sitting back, reflecting on what we've done, and analysing what's been working so far, what hasn't, and looking, even just communicating and bouncing off these feedbacks that we've all had as individuals, and then the feedback that we have for ourselves. I think that's it's great to, I think, every now and then have those moments, not even just for us, for everybody.
Yeah.
And the way that John's been doing it is I think to a completely different level, which just goes to show the attention to detail that he has, and that level of commitment and the willingness to really pursue it. Because anyone can sit there and go to someone and say, okay, can you look at this, give me some feedback, whatever, and they never follow up. But I think, going to that level, and also having the type of people around you that are willing to take half an hour, take an hour out of their day, look through your content and be like, all right, you're not just a pretty face. There's these things you need to improve.
It's interesting. You know the type of friends you have doing this. You know the different levels of friends you have, because there are friends who won't watch the podcast. There are friends who will just watch the clips on Instagram, and there's friends who will watch an entire episode. You can really feel that out. Who's going to commit an hour and a half of their time to just
really true.
help you improve,
And every time they see me, they say I have an obnoxious voice, but still commit to it.
Every time it was going to be your laugh is too loud.
I've heard that from my family. I think it's because of the microphones.
Yeah, sure. No.
I think the other thing is in terms of because I've missed out 6 weeks of guests and sort of that face to face experiences and interactions. But I think from the guests that we initially had and the guests that you guys had, I think for me, and I think it's something maybe you guys would also agree on, is the significant pace of innovation and change in the world that's happening. We've had Laura, who was talking about AI technology. We had Justice, who was talking about biomedical, and agricultural technologies and all these things. And John and Josh are talking about the medical technologies. To me, it emphasizes in an essential way. It's the really rapid pace of and change of technology that our societies are being changed by. And so it's like, if you want to have a business or something like that, it's like there are people out there that are doing incredible stuff. It's not like you can sit back and say they have a couple of years, because right now it's probably, as you're waiting right now, innovation and change is being implemented right now. So it's, to me, I think that highlighted as we're in our normal day-to-day jobs, while we go to the gym and all of this thing, busy with all of these stuff, that there are people who are creative tomorrow. And I think from that small sample set that we had, for example, before I went to Perth, I think, and reflecting on some of the guests that we have now, it's like, wow, there's a lot of things going on in the world. It's like, do you want to be just an observer, or do you want to be a participant in whatever matters, in the size? So I think that's really, it's important to recognize that, especially for most of us, like in this group who want to have our own businesses. So it's we can't sit back and relax. So.
Well, if we go into the details, right? And I don't know, maybe the people that watch this, they don't know everything we do, because I think right now what we've done is we publish on 6 different platforms. We have it on 6 main platforms, which is Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, YouTube, Spotify. That's 5 platforms. And
Facebook.
Facebook as well, because the metaverse, that's right. And technically Apple Podcasts as well. But yeah, it's mainly Spotify. But it's interesting because we've grown followings on all these different platforms separately, but it's interesting because they're not the same people.
Yeah.
Like, people following us on LinkedIn are not the same people as the ones that are following us on Instagram, and the ones on YouTube are not the ones on Spotify, you know what I mean? So it's, even though everything's at like a relatively low number, it's cumulative, right? They're not the same people, so which is really interesting. But so that's the 5 platforms, right? We mentioned. So Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, YouTube, Spotify. YouTube and Spotify, we upload the full episodes, and then the other 3 is just the short form clips. What's really interesting, what I found is, and I think is good with the strategy with the way we've set it up, is that because we upload the short forms to LinkedIn and Instagram, and that feeds into the other 2, because both of the other 2 are promoted, like YouTube and Spotify, on both of those. Depending on, and we do the exact same process for all our guests in terms of the creation of the clips. So it's interesting to me always the types of topics and the types of people we have on, where some episodes will do really well on Instagram, and some episodes will do really well on LinkedIn. Obviously, our Instagram growth has gone really well. I think we're at 228, sure, something like that. I think soon to hit 250, which is 250,000. That's really cool. So, I mean, just for the audience, I mean, so we've been doing this since mid-November, which means we're now in the start of April. So that's like 5.5 months. There you go. Almost 6 months. That's pretty cool. But it took us about, I think, start of March is when we hit 100.
Yeah.
Right? So it took us like 4.5 months to hit 100, and then it took us a month and a half, or just a month and a bit, to get another 128. So it's just see that exponential growth. It's just been so rewarding. But then on LinkedIn, like I think we're at 99. So if one of you goes and follows us on LinkedIn, we'll hit 100.
We see one drop.
No, so like that's probably our second one that's growing. Spotify, we're getting about monthly about 40 listeners, which is pretty cool. 40 unique listeners. I think we have 38 followers. That's actually really cool.
I can guess follower.
Yeah. But on YouTube, it's about 20 something followers, but then our clips are getting like 60-ish, 70-ish views each. But it's so hard to tell because every episode does better than the last, right? But it's really interesting to see the variety of different followings on each one. I think I like the way we've done it, where we just do everything and let the algorithms do its thing.
It's organic, right?
It's organic,
It's not
exactly.
artificial.
And I found it. I'm nerding out a little bit over how the algorithms work, and this is what I was talking to with Michael, who I met up with last week, and it was how the faster the longer the video size generally on a platform, the longer it takes for the algorithm to learn who you are, right? So TikTok and Instagram, obviously, and because we work on Reels, you're talking 90-second videos, right? Clips. On Instagram, we're getting about, on average, I reckon, a bad video will get about 8. I love this stats. This is going to be really interesting. So I don't know if you all know this. So a bad Instagram reel will get about average 8 to 10 second retention. So they'll leave it after 8 to 10 seconds. But that's a bad one of our videos. But the average reel watch time is only 3 seconds. Yeah. So even our worst videos are getting 3 times the average, right? A medium and a good one. Our best one has been one of Breeze's clips. I think it was 33 second average watch time over 2,500 watches, which has been really, really good. But on average, like the Indian Effect, the one that got 520,000 views, that has an average watch time of like 20 seconds, I think. Yeah, so really good, right? So this is how actually algorithm pushes your content. So and you know how, so if you look at like a machine learning model, for example, you have training data and testing data, right? So it trains on a certain amount and then it tests on the rest. What I've learned is that TikTok is the worst at this. TikTok will only train on your video for about an hour, right? So when you publish it, we publish at 10 a.m. If it does well between 10 and 11, it'll pump it for the rest of the day, the rest of the week. If it does bad in the first hour, it just won't show it anymore. It's because so many new videos get uploaded on TikTok every day that like they can't afford to push every single one for too long. Instagram is a bit more forgiving. We get about a day's worth of push time. If it does well on the first day, then it'll keep pushing for the rest of the week and so forth.
Facebook on the other hand.
Yeah, I think Facebook, it was interesting because so the Indian Effect video, for context, most of those views came from Facebook. But we can't see the stats for Facebook, the analytics as clearly as Instagram. So we don't, I wish I knew how that happened. My best guess is probably like somebody shared it onto a Facebook group. Or like
A family WhatsApp.
that's what I'm thinking. I think family WhatsApps.
Your aunties went to someone else and it's spreading like wildfire.
Exactly. It has to be, right? But then it's interesting because a lot of the views and the comments are from people from America.
Yeah.
So that was actually one of our only videos where we tapped into the American audience.
Well, I think that was the statistic we were using was America.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
The
fact that we just mentioned Americans a lot, he just picked it up. And and which is really interesting. I was reading that I think it was so people spend 17.6 million hours per day is the total watch time on Instagram Reels. Yeah, of all users, which is 29 lifetimes per day. Yeah. So it's crazy to think that we're capturing 10 hours, right, of watch time, but the total pool of watch time available is 76 million every day. People are addicted to their phones. We're capitalizing on it, but like still, it's a scary number to think about. But
I think that's where the beauty of having a live audience comes on.
Yeah. So obviously, this is the TikToks and the short form content. Long form content has been good. That's growing again. It takes longer to learn the algorithm, right? So the Instagram takes. I reckon it takes about 6 months solid. What it does in the first 6 months is it's training, right? It's training on who you are. Instagram will constantly try to push your videos to different groups of people. It's testing to see what sticks, what doesn't stick, who likes your videos. We don't know any of the exact algorithm, like how it works, but this is when it's training on your account, not on individual videos, right? After 6 months, it has a pretty good idea when you release a video who's going to watch that video, who's going to enjoy it most. Because it's mutually beneficial for Instagram that we succeed, right? Because Instagram works because there are successful accounts on it. So every new account that's trying something new, they also want it to succeed. But for it to be able to succeed, they need to push to the right people. So it took roughly 6 months, I reckon. Instagram, TikTok, similar, 6 months-ish. YouTube is, and Spotify is different. I don't know about Spotify, but YouTube is a lot harder. Because the video content is so much longer, it takes a lot longer for you to for the algorithm to learn who you are, and for you to build trust with it, and so that you can push it further. This is why you hear stories of YouTubers like having to create videos for 5 years, and then only on the 4th year they actually blow up.
Yeah.
Because for 4 years, the videos haven't changed, right? Like, yes, they're slowly getting better, but nothing changed in the 4-year mark that was 100 times better
Just
than
the algorithm finally figured out who to send it to.
Exactly. So, which is why it's a patience game, right? It's like the you know, that graphic of the two people that's digging for gold,
Oh, yeah.
and the one turns back just before it's still.
It's like a massive pile of diamonds.
Exactly.
Instead of diamonds, the algorithm.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So we don't know when it's gonna hit,
It's our viewers.
but it will. So it's just about the patience there. But that's kind of where we're at that point from social media. And obviously, we've been having chats as well. And what we've obviously really loved about the podcast and what we're seeing is that it's more, yes, we call it a podcast, but I think the way we've structured it, the way we are, like, look where we are, right? We're in a lecture theatre. We've got seats, which the audience can't see, but we've got seats all around the back. This is a bit of a talk show that's getting to. The way that we've structured it, it's an interview. And I think that's going to be where we focus our attention, and like, that's what people want to see. And like Ali mentioned just briefly previously, like, it would be so cool to just have an audience, you know, like, we're not interviewing famous people here, like, we're interviewing everyday people. Oftentimes this is maybe the only chance that they actually get to come on a podcast and talk like this. Yeah. And it's an opportunity for them to be able to bring their family, bring their friends, like, show off what they're doing, you know? Sure, yeah. And having the space to be able to go, yeah, let's come shoot. If you want to bring someone, come, they can have a seat, watch you do your thing as well. It's just bring community together, and I think that's just really exciting. We've been able to, like, start off. We wouldn't, like, did you imagine this 6 months ago?
No.
No, not at all.
And I think, you know, we've had brilliant guests so far, you know, but I'm really, really excited as to, you know, the next 6 months, you know, the variety of guests that we're going to have. I think I'm very, very excited. We're going to learn so much, and I think the podcast is going to grow because we're going to have some high profile guests that we're going to have on here, and so that's going to boost the visibility and exposure of the podcast. But yeah, definitely having more people, from a wider range of industries as well. We've had that so far, but definitely more people who are definitely much a little bit more higher profile. I think having over the past 6 months where we've gotten, I think that has given us a boost of credibility in terms of interviewing these high profile guests. And I can't wait to have conversations with them and see where this podcast goes. We're definitely going to learn a lot. I think having the live audience and the live theatre, I think it's definitely going to be another, at least for me, it's going to be another thing, you know, getting out of my comfort zone. But I can't wait to get out of that and to really grow, because otherwise it won't go right.
One of the interesting points that Michael mentioned was that the reason podcasts do really well is because it's private and intimate, and creating an atmosphere of intimacy allows them to open up about their personal life, not be tense, you know? How do you think we can achieve that intimacy while still having 100 people watching?
Lighting.
Yeah?
Lighting and a lot of billboards saying, you know, please be quiet. I think it's just prefacing the live theatre and saying that this is, although this is, you know, you're here, you know, please So we're still maintaining the aura and the environment of a podcast where there can be that sort of intimate conversations happening. I think you need to create boundaries and all.
Yeah, I think we're going to make it really dark and have really bright lights for the guest stuff. Yeah. It's like if you've ever been on stage.
Yeah. It's exactly
like the spotlight blinds you, like you can't see anyone.
And I think that's what we found when we were using like John's equipment is when we had it set up. I think the way we had it set up was blocking. I think if anyone's sitting in the center row is going to be blocked.
Yeah.
But did you see anything past that blinding light that was just shining into your eyes?
No, not at all.
So I think having two of those is put in a way where it's lighting the guests up perfectly, but it's still blocking their field of view past those lights, but then allowing the guests to be able to see, or like the audience to be able to see the guests. You get the best of both worlds, because I mean even without having 100 people here, like we've had guests come through that, like you said, they probably will never do a podcast in their life. They've had this wonderful opportunity to come through, join us, and have a discussion with us, and beforehand they're so tense. Everyone's so nervous, like, all right, what are we going to talk about? How am I going to articulate myself? And how we have that wonderful thing where we press record, and we just talk.
Yes. Yeah.
But like, look, don't even think, don't even acknowledge the camera being there. Just like that doesn't exist.
Yes.
That's just inanimate object sitting there doing its own thing. Just talk. Look at me, I look at you, we look at one another, and we
just look. Don't talk.
No talking.
This is hysterical.
And then you make that connection, you fall in love. No, it's like just...
No, but like literally before even today's episode, we spent like an hour trying to figure out what we were going to talk about. Where you press record and it's just like, no, can't stop talking.
It clicks into it.
Yeah.
And we even find like those nuggets of conversations that we have when the camera's not there. Sometimes I wish I just had a camera following me 24/7, where I had that brief moment of a conversation where it captures and like sometimes even with our meetings, like we have such insightful conversations. The topics we discuss, I go, this is content worthy.
Which is what we like initially started with. Like I remember when we first started had this idea of doing a podcast. We were like, this is good, but like just to test if we can be consistent with it, let's just don't worry about the camera. Let's just come to the space to talk about whatever. Just show up once a week.
Yeah.
If we can prove that we can show up once a week for like a month and a half, and we're not filming anything, we just sat there and talked about had a discussion, then we'll start filming. And I think that was a really key thing to what we did. Because like, you know how people, like most people don't even make it past episode 6 of a podcast when they started. Our first 6 episodes weren't even recorded. You know? So like,
we're like season 3 now.
Yeah. And so that was, like we really helped. It helped us to like just fall in love with the process of talking.
And that goes to show just our nature. You know, like I know I'm very extroverted when I'm comfortable. Like in new situations, it takes me a little bit of time to really get bursts and start talking. But then I think it's the same for all of us. Like once we're all comfortable, we talk and talk and talk, and whether it's like factual information, whether it's something that we can fabricate, it's that like it's that ability to just talk about anything. And you know, many people in my life I know have pointed out back in the day where like a random stranger would walk past and say, hi, how are you? And somehow I end up talking to them for 40 minutes. And the person with me, they're like, how did you do that? Yeah. And I know the very first time, I was like, I don't know how to talk. The camera's there, it's recording, what do I say? But then, at the end of the day, it's like this skill that you sort of build. And I think having our guests come on, that is them teaching us, but us teaching them how to really have that ability to face out external things, because there may be instances in life where they'll have to go to, with a work event where they have to do a speech or they have to talk in front of a couple of people. And I know a lot of people, especially academics, that are focused in their studies, they're not extroverted. They don't have that ability to really talk to everyone. They're like, they hold themselves in their own corner. Where when they come on here, I feel like by the end of it, I've noticed some people, they just want to keep talking.
Yeah.
I'm like, keep going. It's so good because when you first meet them, they are a little bit more hesitant because, again, it's a new environment, it's people that they don't know. And once you see that click in their comfort levels, it brings up, for me, it like melts my heart. I'm like, yes.
Which is something we're trying to improve because it's like, we've had guests where we've shot the hour and a half, 2 hours, and then they start opening up. And like, no, I want to 2 hours.
No, I think it's just in human nature to be a little bit hesitant when trying new things, and I think the camera is not necessarily something that we're used to. I mean, there's so many people who are more skilled and adept at being extroverted and who are willing to take more risk. But for the vast majority of us, it's not necessarily something that we're well versed in or are quite comfortable with. And I think you're definitely right, Ali, in that it is a skill, and the more you put yourself out there, the more comfortable you become. And so to the point that you can then leverage the skill off to another situation where, like you said, you may have to give a speech, and therefore you have attained the skill where you're able to block out these distractions and all that really face you. But it certainly takes, I know for me, it's not necessarily my first, I'm not really very comfortable with it, something that I'm improving and getting better at, but it's definitely a skill. And I think how I've prefaced, people who have been interested on, coming on the podcast is, they know that it's a camera, and I've gotten this feedback, from input from some people who, expressed their willingness to come on the podcast, but they've also expressed their hesitancy to also come because I have anxiety, I have stage fright, and I'm like, the best thing I can do is it's going to be there, but you just have to accept it, and you just have to go beyond that point.
Yes,
and it's just a conversation between friends. That's what
absolutely. I think I've been a host and I've done the one-on-ones with a couple of our guests now, and that's been really enlightening because you get some people where it's so easy. You can tell immediately when some people have already been behind a camera, or just some people very, very extroverted. Because as a host, you go, I don't worry about anything. I can ask one question, they can talk for 2 hours. It's not about me at all. But then some of our guests, we've had conversations where it's before we record, we have that honest conversation of, this is what I want to talk about, but I'm just warning you, I'm not that great behind a camera, I can't really talk. And then it's my job to go, don't worry about it, you're just talking to me. It's my job to get the information out of you without you even realizing it, right? It's my job to make it comfortable, my job to ask the questions and guide the conversation. I've got control. All you have to do is sit back, relax, and just talk to me. And it was honestly very hard to get used to. I think the hardest part was listening. I think we talked a lot about learning the skill of talking. For me, I talk a lot in my life. I'm a talker. Listening is tough, and especially actually listening versus looking like you're listening, but really you're just trying to think of the next question. Because I've had to get away from that, and because what I've found and a reflection I have for myself in doing this is that the next question is in what they're saying, not in your head. You can't forecast what they're going to say. Correct. And the more you try to think of the next question instead of listen for the next question, the less the conversation will feel like it flows. You feel like it's jumping from topic, right? Where I've learned that if you just listen to what they're saying, they will ask the question for you. They're putting it together. They know they have something that you want them to ask. They want me to ask. Yeah, exactly. You just need to structure it. You just got to figure out what it is and then structure it for them. And they'll just keep talking.
So I think that was one of the discussions that you and I were having, where I do find, and I think over time, as I am in front of the camera and I sit with the guests, it's gonna obviously improve. But outside of this, I am the person that just talks and talks and talks, but has difficulty listening. But when I'm in my introverted stage, I listen, but I can't talk. Whereas this is really training me to do the best of both. Be it the extrovert when I'm talking, but mold that with the introverted listening and have the hybrid model there. And I think there was, I was telling you in one of the interviews that we were doing, I was sitting there and as the guest was talking, in my head, I was trying to formulate something to ask. And I was zoning out, I was acknowledging what they were saying, but it's like I was trying to articulate the perfect question to ask. And that's like one of my feedback for anybody is, at the end of the day, you don't have to say the most perfectly articulated sentence. You don't have to use the smartest word in the dictionary and have this structure that's like Shakespeare will be absolutely proud of. Because that's what I was in my head. I was overcomplicating as I do with a lot of things, and by the time I had formulated the question, the conversation is 20 kilometers ahead, and I'm still stuck back in Adelaide, but they're all the way in Melbourne, and then it just, I don't know, like I was just like, I missed out that opportunity to really listen to what they were saying, and then take the time to listen back and I could have asked this and I could have asked that, and there was like a million different questions I could have asked, but I was stuck on that one. And that's the feedback for future guests and for anybody that's actually really excited to come on but has that hesitation. It's you have that wealth of knowledge to share. You have those lived experiences to share with us, to share with the world. There will always be somebody that will critique you, and everyone is going to be their worst critique. They're going to be the harshest judge for their actions and how they speak. But you've got to be so delicate with yourself. You've got to be so forgiving with how you view yourself. And when you come through, we're all in the same boat.
That's right.
And
there's no pressure.
Yes,
It's on us.
literally.
It's our responsibility.
Whatever you want to share, you share.
And you don't have to listen to your own episode as well.
Because someone else will.
Hold on, there's many guests, and there may be one in particular. But yeah, it's a wonderful journey.
I think that's the most, for me, something that I really want to improve on is and I think it's not something you can always fully stop at, and that's communication. And say, I've mastered communication, that's it. There's always room for improvement. And I think us being hosts and us working with people and interviewing guests, I think gives us that incredible opportunity where we're able to then hone our skills of communication. So listening is not just about it's really being in the moment, really paying attention to what that person is saying and really bouncing off and creating this chemistry. But there's listening, there's communicating, there's telling stories, there's questioning, there's probing. There's just so much with communication and interpersonal skills as well. I think that's really something that I really enjoy, from recording these podcasts and then rewatching and really evaluating and having that closed loop feedback, which is really, really important, and so that you can improve. Because communication, it's like driving; it will always be with you forever. And so the better you can get at it early on, the more benefits that you can reap out of it. It's just compounding interest essentially, and so it's really, really important. I think I really value these episodes where we have that opportunity to practice that.
In communication, we utilize that more than we do driving. We utilize that more than we do walking. So.
And
I mean, yes, we are going towards that path where a lot of people aren't communicating with one another. There has been that self-isolation and people just glued to their screen, which is the reason why we have, 9 lifetimes?
29.
So 29 lifetimes.
29 lifetimes in a day.
What the?
That's
just Instagram.
I was listening.
Just Instagram. That's where I was articulating the question. But it's like 29 lifetimes. And that goes to show how much people are glued to the phone than they are communicating.
And think about it as well, it's, or whenever you've been in a conference or a speech or something along those lines, you know, in these events, where there's been communicators and speakers who's been very poor, and the ones who are, you would call it natural and very confident in great speakers. And the contrast between the two, it's night and day. It's someone who can lead and someone who you don't really respect, or you know, you feel so awkward, you know. And so the fact that they're able to communicate their ideas and inspire a lot of people, you know, some of the great leaders in history have been master orators, you know, masters of the use of, you know, their language to be able to captivate audiences. And I think that's why I say it's so important. It's so important in order to be able to gain a level of mastery where, you know, for the majority of things that you're going to do in your life, that it's, you know, you can tap into those tools and to really take advantage of it. We talk about business, you know, you need, as the CEO, as one of the co-founders, you need to have great communication skills, because like you said, your leaders, you know, they know everything, but they don't do all of it, right? They delegate these tasks to their, you know, employees. And in order to be able to be a manager, a leader of people, you need to be able to communicate with them, you need to be able to convince them, and you really need to inspire them. Sometimes, you know, the work with them may not necessarily be great, so you have to have communication. I think it is one of the most fundamental tools that skills that we need. And this podcast, not only for us, but the people who are on the podcast, and they can, you know, watch their own episode and be able to reflect on how
and improve
and what they can improve on.
Mm-hmm.
It's so important.
Yeah.
It's one of the skills that you can never stop, you know, practicing getting better at.
Yes, and a great way to learn that is to come on the podcast.
Yeah,
so,
by doing that.
So
come.
reach out. I think I have the feeling that there's so many people that are hesitant.
Yeah.
They're very hesitant, and even discussions that I was having, like last year I was doing a summer school class for like entrepreneurship or whatever, and going through, and like I felt a sense of pride. They're like, oh, so what's everyone doing in terms of like outside of uni or whatnot, and for me, I don't know, I tend to fall into this gap where I say that I'm not doing much, and I've told you this many times as well. Like, I feel like I'm that door hinge where like I'm constantly moving, I'm running around, but it feels like I'm not going anywhere. But that's where it's like that delayed gratification. You know, you do so much work, and it eventually will pay off. But then, you know, I said, I work full time, I study full time, and got the podcast, and people go, podcast? I could never. Why? It's so awkward. I don't know how to. I don't like talking, and I don't like this. But then, when you actually see them, just in those discussions, like we were having a group assignment, we were creating like a website, and some people, you know, I was just like, oh, so tell me about yourself. And you know, there's this one guy who's like, oh, you know, my dad creates, I forgot what it was, but it's like this one particular product for the defence in Australia, and I'm doing business to then be able to go and take over my dad's company. And we're the only company within Australia that actually fabricates that part. And we have that exclusive contract within the defence industry. And then it's essentially like, you know, I've worked there since I was young, and my dad's previously was in the private sector, but then got the defence contract. And I was like, you were telling me you don't know how to articulate a sentence, you were telling me it's very awkward, but the way you're talking to me now, I think the only thing that's daunting you is thinking about the camera, thinking about somebody else listening. But the way you articulate, the way you talk to me now, it's perfect. I would love to have that information. Like, I would love to have you come through.
What an interesting potential guest. Yeah.
And,
everyone has a story. Everyone has. That's one thing that probably I learned. Maybe I had the stereotype in my head that maybe it's because I grew up in an Indian community where everyone had the same expectations and a lot of people had the same outcomes in life.
Yeah.
And so you have this idea that everyone's the same. Like, same story, different bodies, you know? But this podcast and interviewing these people has really made me realize, even though two people might look the same, they have completely different stories. Yeah. There's always something to learn. Jordan Peterson has in his 12 Rules of Life, one of the rules is always assume the person you're talking to knows something you don't. You know, and I think that's maybe.
No, sometimes that's the case.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to finish off because I'm aware of time, but we've always asked this to every guest recently, and it's a great question. I love asking, and I'll ask so we can answer. Who is a local role model for you? Who is someone in your life, locally here, not globally or not on the internet, that you look up to, that you impersonate on a day-to-day, or in some aspect of your life?
Oh, wow. That is a big question. That is a big question. I think, I don't know about Ali, but like when we first came here, it was not many Africans.
Oh, that was so great.
there wasn't that many Africans, and so local role models that you could look up to was kind of non-existent because like everyone's like on the same page. You're growing. It's like the first generation that came here, so it's like role models is I think wasn't someone who's achieved there and like I want to go and see because representation really matters, right? It's like when you're in a different country, representation really matters because it's like, okay, that's something that I can achieve. And so for me, I'm not sure about Ali, but for me, that wasn't really there. I think once we, as the years went on, I think essentially became role models for ourselves because there was really people there. And also some of our friends who went their own paths and achieved certain levels of success. I think that came later on, and then using that as inspiration or feeling a sense of pride. I think for us was the way it happened. It wasn't necessarily that people were there before, maybe in other places, but not in LA.
I think from my end, because I came to LA quite late compared to you guys. I think you were here very, very early on. Where me, I grew up in Wilmington, South Wales, middle of nowhere. I think the population was about 10,000 to 20,000 people. It grew over the time that we were there. Initially, there was quite a lot of backends, but again, it was a type of sort of town that everyone was either doing some sort of farm work, or was working in the warehouse. We had like Steggles, I think, was one of the biggest employers there, and a lot of wineries. But of course, with Africans and especially us following Islam, we're not going to be going down that path as well. So it was very limited opportunities, but not a lot of people to really look up to. That's when 2015 we shifted over to Adelaide. And I think at that time there were some individuals and figures within the African community that had achieved some level of success. So I know at the time there was one of our family members from my mum's side that had established quite a successful grocery supermarket, and initially it was just selling African products and catered towards that African community. But then, just the level of ambition and the thought process and that business mindset that they had, they grew it to now being an IGA and opening two of those. And there's been many figures around us that I've looked at and really been impressed by the